Well, hello and welcome to Code3 Conversations. I am CC Strong and this is Code3 Conversations. What is that exactly? Well, let me first say Happy New Year to you. It's a new year, 2026, and people start making resolutions and doing all type of things to better themselves. And I truly believe every day you should try to be a little bit better than the person that you were yesterday. Well, last year, we decided that it was time to stop shouting back and forth and start talking to solve some of the problems between the community and law enforcement officers. So that's where Code3 Conversations came into play. And I happened to invite a special guest to my very first Code3 Conversations, thinking he was just going to come in and give some insight. And he actually came right alongside, partnered with, and has been doing every single episode with me. You might recognize a name on the screen. There is a certain chief who's now retired who is sitting right on the other side of the screen from me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask him to come on and join me in this Code3 Conversations discussion. So let me introduce to you Chief, now retired, and also my husband, Eric Strong.
Hello, everybody. I'm glad to be here. And I just want to add, I had a choice. You mean I didn't have to be here every single
What do you
time?
mean?
You you said I decided to just come.
Moving right
I
along, moving right along.
love to be
Yes,
here. I'm
you
so glad.
did. Well, you were.
No, I love what you're doing and how you're doing it. I love it. So I'm always excited to be here.
Thank you. And
You're
yeah, you were
speechless.
voluntold. You were voluntold for that first
There you
episode,
go.
and then it was actually good. So we're gonna go with that. But
There you
we
go.
at Code3 Conversations believe that conversations take you into a better space of healing. And there is nothing but a widening gap between the community and law enforcement officers, be it the topics of excessive force, of racism, of politics, which actually, in my opinion, shouldn't even reach into the arena of law enforcement. Why? Because I need to be as neutral as possible in every situation that I approach. But you are looking at two people who have over 62 years of law enforcement experience. Did we ever get it right 100%? Absolutely not. Did we always know exactly what to do at every given moment? I like to say that that guy right there, if I'm nodding my head in the right direction, got it right a whole lot better than I could have ever. But it was a lesson in doing right by people, helping within the community. The crimes that needed to actually be addressed, they need to be addressed. That's the whole purpose, protecting life and property. And you hear the cliche for protecting and serving. But at the end of the day, we are servant leaders, and that is more of a cape and something to be proud of than any excessive force and misuse and abuse of power. So, if you're ready, Eric, I want to jump right into the topics that we have today. If you're okay with that, we can get started. What do you
Yeah,
think?
let's do it. Yeah,
Oh,
I'm ready.
and
I'm
I,
ready to hear what they are because
ex-
they're always a surprise to me.
and nowadays, my staff gets in contact with your staff, even if we're in the same household. It's pretty
Right.
scary. So I did not get these to you in time, but my apologies for that. But we're just going to drum roll and see what's going on and what's going to happen. So this is Code3 Conversations, and what you're looking at is our actual topics. And once again, we'd like to actually welcome you to 2026, the new year. How exciting is that? But every day alive and every day you open your eyes and wake up is a blessing. And you need to be happy about that, or at least I think you should be happy about it. So, with that being said, drum roll. Now, one of my favorite sayings, and Eric, you've heard me say this before, uniform wearing you versus not you actually wearing the uniform. So the uniform wearing you or you wearing the uniform is basically what that means. I see it as when the uniform wears me, it is everything. It consumes my life. It's the only friends I hang out with. I am only around fellow law enforcement officers. It's in my language. Every 5 minutes, I'm telling a story, a war story, something about what happened on the job. And I get kind of absorbed into the uniform, and I equate it to like Spider-Man, you know, how his suit is on him. And then there's the actually trying to pull the mask off, like the movie Mask, where Jim Carrey has put this mask on and then he's trying to take it off and it just won't come off. It's the uniform becomes all solely who you are. On the flip side of that, for me, when you wear the uniform, you are wearing it with honor, with courage, with the pride, and your character coming through in a positive way and enforcing the laws the way that they need to be enforced. Now, it's not soft on crime. Crime is crime and it needs to have consequences, period. But we don't shift that narrative depending on who we're dealing with. It's basically the actions, not the actual person. So when we personalize it and we don't treat people fair and actually do right by them, even in the face of being arrested, I'm not their judge and jury in the streets. There are proper steps that are taken once that happens, and an arrest is effected, as they say. So, what is your thought on that, Eric, with that overall? The uniform wearing you or you wearing the uniform? Is that kind of just crazy thinking? What's your mindset when you hear me say that, or you've heard me say that in the past?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that's something that I remember one of my TAC instructors, DIs, said in the academy. You know, he told us there's going to be some people that wear the uniform, and it's going to be some people that the uniform wears them, or the badge wears them. And I'll take it even a step further, and in line with everything that you said, it goes even further to me, whereas they're no longer part of normal society. It's cops versus people, or it's us versus them. They almost start seeing themselves as something different. Um, they identify themselves as people say, "Hey, who are you?" "I'm a cop." What? No, I mean, just like, what's your name? You know, like, who are you? What do you do? You know what I mean? Maybe it's not about, I didn't ask you what you do. I guess I should say, but um, it becomes that us versus them. And then when you have that, I think one of the biggest components of the uniform wearing you is they are no longer objective. They
Mm,
no longer see anything that happened. They figure out a way to justify everything. Oh, well, he must have did that because the guy must have had this, or the guy must have done that. Well, must he have done it? Or maybe do you just not really know all the facts and you don't have all the information? Why are you instantly defending because you saw somebody with a badge on and there is no way possible that they could have ever done any wrong? You know, I think that's the indoctrination. I'm trying to look up a good word. You know, I guess the real word is brainwashing, that goes along with it sometimes. So, but yes, when you wear the uniform, you put that on as part of your daily job, as part of your profession, and you wear it with pride. You know, you keep that badge shined and your shoes shined, and you look sharp, and you wear it and you put it on so that people know that there's some honor behind that profession when you wear it. And you wearing the uniform doesn't change who you are when you put it on. I think that's the biggest
absolutely.
thing. Yeah, you're
Absolutely.
the same person you are outside than you are inside. You know who you are outside the uniform and inside the uniform.
And it begs the question then when you say you know who you are, if maybe those who do help us right along and usher us right into those headlines, if maybe they really don't know who they are. You take the ones who think that living in a certain area, it's like it was always strange to me that some people who had no clue about certain areas and growing up, quite honestly, like I did, they were wanting so bad to work in those areas, almost like a need in order to get in there and get into the thick of things. And it's great if you have this ambition and you want to work and you want to work hard and you want to be busy and you want to stay in the action because you are doing something good. There's honor in it. I mean, I imagine, you know, the Superman kind of dog whistle where he smells or senses something that's off, and then all of a sudden he turns around and the crowd doesn't see this big giant thing crashing down. Then he all of a sudden ducks behind a building and he goes and keeps it from smashing and squashing people. It's one thing to have that type of idea of it being okay to save lives, to effect arrests, to get the bad things off the street, the guns, the drugs, all of that. But it's quite another when your sole purpose is to be able to wear this uniform and then have it wear you into the locker room to brag about what you just did. And I hate to say it, I think I said it some time ago on another Code 3 Conversations. We had a guy that literally was sending a photo of someone that he and other deputies had beaten. He was a sergeant. And he was sharing that photo like it was a badge of honor. And I can never connect to that. There's no excuse, there's no way wiggling out of it, but you will have people who will justify the behavior of anything because they only see that uniform wearing the officer and not the actions of the officer themselves. And it's really, really sad because it makes us all look like that is the whole intention. And guess what? All cops are bad. And guess what? You're
I,
putting me in jeopardy of my safety because now that person that thinks that all cops are bad, what is one of the things that they will actually do? Be negative with every cop that they see. And heaven forbid they have a death wish or they're angry and upset to the point that they take it out on someone unsuspecting and not even prepared in that moment.
I think it's important to notice, or important to say or note that when you say people have this impression that all cops are bad, if all of your interactions with cops are bad, you're going to think all cops are bad. You know what I mean? It's just going to be like if all of your interactions with any particular group or animal or anything, you know what I mean? You're going to, if every time I come across a dog, he bites rather than wags his tail and rubs up against me and lets me rub his belly, but all I get is a bite, a bite, a bite. And I'm going to start thinking all dogs bite, which they do technically, but you know what I mean? Um, um,
Uh, Rest her soul. Our dog wasn't a biter.
yeah, no, she ran away from everything.
She's like, I'm
But
cool. I don't even deal with cats. I run from
oh
them.
no, get me away from this cat. But
Yes,
I think it's just it's a perspective, but it's also one of those things where we can't act like it doesn't happen. We'll see things, and I go back to when I was talking about, when you see an incident on television or in the news, and cops instantly start defending the other officers, even when if it looks bad and it looks horrible, the first thing they want to say is, "Oh, well, you don't know all the facts." Okay, right? But if they see any opportunity to justify it, that's typically what you see. A lot of times, that's the first thing that they do. I mean, the first thing they start doing is start justifying and figuring out a way to, what I used to say, we write it right. We WRITE it until it's RIGHT, and we just keep writing and keep writing and keep writing until now it's justified and it's right. So,
absolutely. And you
yeah.
and you said I agree with you with the dog bite to a certain degree because I would use myself as an example. If that is in fact the case, that most of your interactions or all of your interactions in the way that you said that were negative, I didn't have good experiences with law enforcement growing up. I didn't have a lot of interactions with them because I wasn't out there doing anything that really brought a lot of attention to me, but I didn't have a high opinion. So in keeping with that, it's like a full circle moment with how my career ended. I didn't have a good opinion. And then I go into a space of, hey, I want to go in and be part of the solution. And then to come full circle, and it's like, wow, the people that are supposed to be partners are part of the people who are coming after me. And so I could see it from that perspective of I had an idea, I tried to shift that narrative and have a different mindset about it. 30 years later, being a part of it and actually doing, I wasn't doing anything and doing harm to people. That wasn't my intention ever. But to see that, what would be in the mind of someone like me. And I can honestly say, still, I believe in the profession. I believe there is a good place for it, but I can see and connect to why I felt the way that I felt before. And definitely with what I'm dealing with right now, I still have those mindsets that, yeah, there's some folks out there that never should be wearing uniforms ever. And they're the people that will probably be the first ones to have the negative that you just said, easily defending anything that's law enforcement and not being able to get out of that.
It's just it's one of those things I think that the profession is going to battle um, from here until the end of time. It's something that it's been dealing with. In other words, this is not a new conversation. This is not a new topic. It's been going on for generations. I think that's where it comes up to individual leaders, individual people impacting what they can impact in their reach. Who's working underneath you, who's working next to you, who's working around you, where you continue to impact those officers, those deputies in a positive way. It's going to start taking leaders. I think one of the biggest things for me is just this idea that comes along of the us versus them, where you stop seeing yourself as almost a member of society and you see yourself as a cop,
Yeah.
and you almost see yourself different. But the reality of it is that you came from somewhere. You lived then and you live now in some neighborhood. Your kids go to some school. Your family members or you go to some church. So you belong to so many different communities, yourself. And it's like I would always tell people, that I'm working with, deputies. I said, how would you want your family members treated? And if you're not, well, they're gonna, I've already told my family members that, when, if they get into any kind of thing, make sure they tell them, you know what I mean, that I'm, their dad or their wife or their husband or whatever, is in law enforcement, and that'll help everything. I said, that's really good. I said, but what if they're in a car accident and they're unconscious? What if they can't tell anybody? Do you want a bunch of cops standing around them laughing and joking, not giving any medical aid? Or do you want them in there actually trying to help? Are they going to say, oh, yeah, man, he's all messed up? Wow, look at the way his leg is behind his head. Oh, man, that's cool. Let me take a picture. And then you come to find out it's your brother.
Yeah.
How are you going to feel then? And it's almost sad that they don't think of that. Like when you say that, it's almost like they're like, oh, well, I never thought about it. Like, why not? Why wouldn't
Yeah.
you think of that?
Yeah.
How do you not think about that?
I
And
I think you said it best. They don't think about it because the majority of people jump to a defense immediately. There is almost zero objective thinking in the people that have those type of responses. They cannot see a let me step back, be the bigger person, not use how I feel about a certain type of person, a certain area, whatever it is. They do not have the objective reasoning to see beyond their own opinion. I firmly believe that there is a serious lack of maturity because an adult in a situation having a conversation can regulate their own feelings, their own mindset. Emotions rise. But if you're not even willing to start the conversation and you immediately shut down and upon no, well, hey, we don't have all of the video footage when it works for you. But then when it is, we have, hey, you saw the video when it's in favor of the officer or what they perceive as a favor of the officer. And it's not a bashing. And for anyone who is watching Code 3 Conversations right now, trust me, we are not bashing the profession. But there is something to be said about doing something yourself to improve a situation you're involved in. I can only go so far reaching someone else. I cannot force them to do anything. If I meet them halfway, that's even better than what it was when we were both far apart. but I've got to be willing to regulate me. And when we take accountability as law enforcement, and Eric, you always say this, we're the paid professionals. The people in the street are not paid to be professional. We are. So we do have to take a look at us and primarily, how do we fix some of the problems? And I have to give you a shout out right now because realistically, I know and I've seen you planning, I've seen what you're working on, I've seen you, and you always have the mindset for everybody. You're literally thinking about women that are dealing with problems in the street. You're thinking about young people who are having struggles with understanding these law enforcement officers. You're thinking about every color of the rainbow of people. And how do we shut down and quiet the noise of all these differences and people fighting and feuding when we're all human beings? You just said that not too long ago. It's like we didn't create ourselves. So why are we actually acting like we have the last say on who is and who isn't available for this whole humanity thing? Who deserves it and who doesn't? And so I have to shout you out in that respect because that's hope for me. And that's not hope for me because you're my husband and it's like you're running for sheriff. It would be a great position for you to be in. Yes, it's not that at all. I want my grandbabies to have better. I want us as uniformed officers to be out of the headlines, off the radar of negativity. I want better for the profession, even if it didn't treat me kind on the way out of the door.
I just want to say, we're watching a show and very, very impactful scene. And if anybody has seen, Scandal,
With Kerry
um,
Washington, yes, I like her.
yes, yeah. Um, there's a scene in there where she's trying to, basically mitigate a situation where there's an officer involved shooting with a kid, and the officer ends up planting a knife. And when he's confronted with it, he just goes into this tirade about why it was okay and how he risked his life every day to come into this neighborhood and deal with these people and do everything that he can to protect them, but they're killing each other. And as you can probably imagine, it was if you haven't seen it, is a white officer after he shot an unarmed black teenager. And it was, there's always this thought, does life imitate art or does art imitate life? And the fact that they went on this tirade about him justifying why he should be okay and why it should be okay for what happened to have happened. And that is a perfect example of the uniform wearing the officer because it did not,
Yep.
there was no humanity. There was no reverence for life. There was no remorse. It was just, I did what I did and you guys should be okay with it, even though I planted evidence to make it okay, And so, I've had those conversations with law enforcement where they will justify to the very, very end something and they've created it in their mind that it's right and you can't tell them anything different. So I was just thinking about it as you were talking that, we just saw that, on that particular episode. And I think it's just a perfect, perfect example. And it's all about how can we do better, you know. And I think what the biggest thing that we're having is that the community doesn't trust us. And so, right here in Los Angeles, just a couple of weeks ago, an article came out about, the sexual abuse of women in our jails. And in that article, there was something where they referenced somewhere close to 600 complaints and not one of them being sustained. And that's why the community can't trust us. Because somebody feels like, well, the best way to handle this is to not sustain any of them.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, how are you thinking that anybody's going to believe that? And by the way, some of them did have evidence that, were sustainable. But why not show that, hey, our people that work here are just that. They're people and they're
Yeah,
fallible. They make mistakes or they are malicious or they're wrong or they do bad things. And when we find out, we deal with it. No, what we'd rather do is say, oh, no, we never do anything wrong ever. It's like that's just ridiculous. It makes no sense. So we got to do better. We got to do better.
absolutely. So, in another episode, we talked about, and this popped in my head because we were talking about, and I think you asked the question of me, what my thoughts were with officers going immediately into custody when you're in the sheriff's department, as opposed to going out on the street immediately. It literally pinged in my brain just now that I would have almost a similar argument is should people who didn't grow up in those neighborhoods, who have zero experience with those neighborhoods, and you know what I'm talking about, maybe those are the wrong people to send in until they actually go and get to see, you know what I mean? They almost have to have a
You don't
special
even want to go
training.
there. Wait, don't you have some other topics? Because we can go down that rabbit hole because really what it comes down to is like, who are we hiring? Who are we putting in these neighborhoods? So we've
Absolutely.
had those conversations about the hiring process, you know,
Yes.
and what everybody goes through. So yeah, you
No.
know,
Okay. Okay. We're gonna
yeah,
we're gonna
I'm
we're
just
gonna keep it
saying, you know,
moving.
we can go.
We
If
can
you
keep
want to
it.
go, we can go. We can
We can
go.
keep it
Hey,
moving.
you
Well,
want to go?
maybe
We
it'll.
can go.
We
No.
can go. Wait a minute.
Uh,
But do you want me to actually? It probably is going to fit in any of these because I know what the topics are because I just glanced at them right before we started. But it
okay.
might come up a little bit more. So, like, put
Okay.
a pin in that for just a second
Okay.
as we
All
as
right.
we
All right.
drum
What's the
roll
next?
into the
All right.
next
Come on.
one.
What? Come on with it. What is it?
Ethical decision making in uniform. So it's pretty much
Hmm.
similar to what we've already been talking about. The ethics
Right.
of it all. And to me, I remember training on ethics. It was part of when I was a drill instructor on campus, we would train people with the ethics. And quite honestly, Eric, I remember some of the returns from people because imagine these are not seasoned law enforcement officers. These are people aspiring to become law enforcement officers. Some of their biases literally would come out in their response after they had gone through the scenario. I wouldn't even say maliciously because they're standing there clearly talking to me, someone who looks completely different from them. But some of their conversations, I would have to have like this sidebar of, you honestly believe that? Like automatically, did you? And here's why I say that. You put a certain person in the scenario, and if you switch it and then use it with someone different, a different race, how does that change the scenario? The scenario is still the same, but the imagery of looking at what you perceive as a threat compared to what you perceive as being safe, it is crazy to me how people do not understand that a certain race, gender, you know, person, taller, shorter, heavier, skinny, how can you say what crime really looks like when
Well,
crimes are committed by any and everybody at any given moment?
everybody, everybody, and let me just jump in because that just brings out, you know, a question that was posed to me by the union when I was in front of the union board, and they said, "Hey, you're part of this organization, and this organization stands up against, you know, racism in law enforcement. Do you think there's racism in law enforcement?" I looked at him like, yes.
Oh,
Oh,
I
really?
remember that.
Well, do you think there's racism in the sheriff's department? Yes, there is. Oh, well, do tell. How do you figure that? I said, well, let me give you this example. I said, the Supreme Court has said that traffic stops are inherently dangerous. Would you agree? Like, yes, that's right. I said, so they give us law enforcement the authority to get somebody out of the car because traffic stops are inherently, that's right, they sure are, and anybody can have anything in a car and they can do this and it's very dangerous. I said, exactly. I said, so why do we get people out of the car in Compton but we don't get them out in Malibu? If it's the traffic stop that's inherently dangerous, then everybody should get out of the car, right? Doesn't matter where that. And you should have seen the looks on their faces and they want to talk. I said, no, really, it's not a rhetorical question. Tell me why we do that. That's a practice.
Yes.
Why do we get them out of the car in East LA, but we don't get them out of the car in Crescenta Valley, in Lamita, wherever it is? I mean, tell me about that. And all of a sudden, they didn't want to talk about it anymore. Because once you
Yeah.
show them that their own ways, because what you're really telling me is it's the person that's in the car that I perceive to be inherently dangerous. And and this goes on with other conversations where I say, well, we recover, a lot of guns and a lot of dope. And I'm just going to use the because we have the station, Century Station, you know what I mean? Willowbrook, Firestone, Linwood. We recover a lot of guns. Well, let's see. If you stop everybody and everybody you stop, you get them out of the car, and everybody you get out of the car, you search the car, yeah, you're probably going to find something. But if you, and I don't know, let's just say Pasadena, you stop everybody, but you get nobody out of the car and you never search the car, then of course you're never going to find the guns and dope. Doesn't mean they're not there. It doesn't mean what it means is you're not looking for it. Does it mean that it's really not there? Do we really, so really, and they've convinced themselves it's rhetoric and it's propaganda. They've convinced themselves that this is more violent over here, it's less violent over there. So therefore, we have to do it over here. We don't have to do it over there. But no, that's not true.
Yes.
It's really not true. There's all kind of ways that we can get into a car, get somebody out of the car. In other words, when you do it every single time to every single person, how do you say it's not racially motivated? And I don't know if we will say it's racist, but you're looking at the color of somebody's skin and you're making a determination on how you're going to handle that particular call based on the color of the skin, not based on the set of circumstances, which is what you were just talking about. Same scenario,
Yes.
exact same scenario, same role play.
And
You
I'm
know,
living proof because it was so easy for these people to jump on board about the case against me because I newsflash, everyone listening, I'm from Compton. I grew up in Compton, California.
straight out of
Compton. I grew up there. And no, I did not grab a guy looking for tattoos. I did not mistreat people with disabilities. I did not create a hostile work environment for my staff. I held them accountable because they were used to doing nothing. But it was easy to believe that I could have, based on a perception and a mindset of people who look like this and grow up in the area in which I did. Point blank, period, because my evaluation said something totally different and my
I just
mannerism
say
and
something.
behavior.
Can
Yes.
I just say something? I want to go down. I want to digress for a minute
Okay.
because you talked about certain things that you were accused of in your case. And I
Mhm.
want to talk about, and I don't even know if I got time to talk about, I don't want to go too far, but you had a great, great outcome yesterday.
Yes.
You want me to tell him about it? Can I tell him about it? Can I mention it? Can I?
I wouldn't go too deep detail about it, but
Okay,
you,
so let me make it real quick. So you had an attorney that wasn't really doing their job, and they kept blaming everything on the judge, and they weren't. Matter of fact, I think they were kind of making really like some inaccurate, I don't want to say false or lying, but maybe some inaccurate statements to them about what happened. And then the attorney tried to fire you and tried to blame it all on you, but then you had to respond to the attorney. So when you responded to the attorney, you said what actually happened, and you actually supported it through emails. And the judge came back and said, hmm, this is interesting. Mrs. Strong, Mrs. Sherrod Strong, you laid out a very good argument. And what I see is that you don't even know what's your case, the status of your case right now. She did a great job of explaining it and, sided with you because your attorney was really trying to leave you in a trick bag by removing himself from your case, leaving you without representation, but continuing to hold a lien and some financial encumbrances on your case so that you couldn't go anywhere else. And short story long, you won. Congratulations. Well, short
thank you. Even
short
though I
story
am,
long. I was there. So I mean, it was just like the way that judge broke down everything that you presented, everything that you had put on there, and understood exactly what you were saying and was able to see through the fluff because of what you had. And this is all stemming from those allegations that you talked about. For those people that are listening to understand, well, what's the relevance of that? Well, because You were put under an investigation for somebody saying that you grabbed them and was looking for gang tattoos. You were put under investigation for people trying to say you mistreated people with disabilities. You were put under investigation for mistreating your staff. And guess what? Completely exonerated from all of it. Your contractual rights were violated. There was absolutely no evidence for discipline. So we know it was retaliatory. We know it was discriminatory. We know it came from that idiot, the former sheriff, Alex Villanueva, but it was carried on by the current sheriff. And so it's these outside processes that are proving that you're right when the people on the inside are trying to vilify you, which has something to do with the color of your skin, like you said, has something to do with your gender, but has something to do with where you came from. Anyway, I totally went off topic of what we were talking about, but it's not off topic because what we're talking about is ethics and integrity.
Decision-making.
And people always really want to talk about that line officer, that person that's driving, that black and white that's responding to the calls. They want to talk about that person that's getting people out of their cells for breakfast and for court in the morning. The real problem, the biggest problem, is the unethical leadership.
Amen.
The people that are making the decisions. And I've sat at the table. I've been in that office with the decision makers. I've been at that conference table with the decision makers. And I will tell you this, one of the reasons they don't like me is because I speak up and like, hey, that's not right. Mm-hmm. I wasn't the go along to get along guy, but I've sat at that table. And the problem, in a lot of ways, is the decision makers.
Absolutely. And the ethics and the lack of integrity. Thank you for that. You're like, I'm not going to talk about it, but I'm going to talk about it, and I'm going to throw it out there, and I'm going to just say this, and I'm just going to get a point across.
We didn't take up too much time from the topics that you had.
But when you say you sat at some tables, I can give equally to your force of doing the right thing. And funny thing, Eric, you've broken through some barriers, though. The one thing that has never been disputed with you is your ability to do the right thing and to stand in that no matter what. It's like not getting sucked up and is absorbed. I've literally seen you lose friends behind your stances. I've literally seen you work in some of the top positions within the department with, audits and accountability, your advocacy unit, IAB. No matter what, even with you being a force for, I'm going to tell the truth and you're not going to get me to lie about stuff, your intellect broke through that barrier. That's the way that I always saw it. Because case in point, they stacked this case and they stacked on it huge for me. But the barrier breaking came in the fact that I was doing my job the right way. And there's something that no matter what you do, you cannot dispute your level of intellect that comes to launch. And what you don't know, you've never been ashamed to say, hey, I don't know, but I'm going to look it up. And then you're an expert at it within a matter of a few minutes. And don't think that it's not missed on me, the ethical decision making of you helping me and saying, hey, I want to help you get prepared for things like what I've been dealing with. So hats off to you. And I thank you for I don't think I've ever said this to you publicly, but and I know you would dispute it, but I thank you for being one of my biggest mentors. You swear up and down that I don't listen to anything you say and that, you don't listen to me, you don't pay attention, but I do. Because you have sound advice, you have insight, you have the backing, you have the experience, you have the ability to say, this case is crazy. I've never seen anything like that. And not just one case, but even a second one, which now I'm seeing as stack on a second case because we know that first one is not very strong. And now we got to really crunch down.
Even weaker than the first one. They just didn't know you had the documentation.
Exactly.
But I want to say something for the law enforcement out there, if anybody should be listening to this. And I want to say this is not as a pat on my back, but as a testimony of real life experience. 4 months into my career, 4 months in, I got into a hellacious shooting, right? With me and a guy in an AK-47. And that's not a badge of honor in any way, shape, or form. But the way that I got into that shooting was because I was 4 months in. I was on training and I had a training officer, and that training officer gave me some directions, told me something to do, and that led me into that shooting. And I was by myself. Fast forward a couple of days later, I've taken off work, you know what I mean? I have to go see the psychologist and you get your 3 days off and I come back to work. Um, and I go into the watch commander's office and a sergeant instantly hits me with a written reprimand. And the written reprimand, I read it and he outlines how I disobeyed orders, how I put myself and my training officer in harm's way by
Wait, wait,
disobeying
wait. How did
orders.
I not know all of that? I know I've
Well,
heard the story before, but
we,
did I just miss that or fall asleep?
yeah, it's not something that I've really talked about. And let me
Wow.
say this. That particular training officer, he and I later had a great deal of I had of respect for each other, and I liked him as a person, and he was supportive of me throughout my career, and I of him later. We had some tough moments there for a minute,
For
but
real.
yeah, but what ended up happening was, obviously, in an effort to kind of save his own butt, he told a
Wow.
version of the story that wasn't completely accurate. And fortunately for me, there were other officers that responded to the scene and stood behind me like, hey, what? Because they saw a portion of it, because it was a big fight, it was a big party thing. So other officers were already coming to the scene. Um, and really what happened was he was behind the radio car, like 3 or 4 houses down, kind of crouched down, hiding. And I was out there. Um, but anyway, the point is this. The watch sergeant at the time said, hey, I need you to sign this. And I looked at it and I read it and it was inaccurate. I said, I can't sign this. And he says, what do you mean you can't sign it? I said, this is not accurate. He says, what do you mean? I said, this is not what happened. And I gave him a little bit of a scenario. He says, who do you think we're going to believe? You or a tenured training officer that's been here for 10 or 11 years? You're a rookie. You're still on probation. You can get fired. And I remember
Wow.
looking at him and very respectfully saying, sir, I understand. I get it. And if that's the outcome, but I said, I'm not signing something that's not accurate.
Mm.
My
Days.
point is
I read
this.
this.
My point is this. Integrity is integrity. And so many times I've seen it. Peace officers get pushed into giving up their values and their ethics and their integrity because they're afraid, because they're afraid of retaliation. We've heard all too often about police officers or deputy sheriffs refusing to go back up their partners if their partners don't get along to go along or go along to get along, which is BS. And my point is, do the right thing,
Yeah.
because you have to start setting the standard. And I'll be honest with you, is that even that sergeant that tried to threaten me at that moment, later on in my career, has come to me and said how much respect he has for me. And I kind of I tried to lead by example, but it goes back, CC, to the uniform.
Mhm.
Do you know who you are inside the uniform, outside the uniform? And I am not the most, listen, I've made a lot of mistakes in my life. But my point is, me standing up and telling the truth that day had nothing to do with that uniform. It had nothing to
Amen.
do with what the academy taught me. It had everything to do with what my parents taught me while I was growing up. So who was I before I put that uniform on? And who am I when I put it on? And I would just encourage law enforcement, peace officers, just as you did. You didn't give up. You could have easily said, you know what, it's easier for me to just forget it, give up. But what you really said was, that's not right. It's a lie. It's not true. I'm not going to stand on it. And I'm not going to just be silent while you continue to tell these lies. And while these are internal things, it goes the same when we're dealing with the public. Tell the truth. Treat people with humanity and dignity. If you didn't find the gun or the dope on the person, don't say you found the gun or the dope on the person. If you didn't see what happened, don't say you saw what happened. Right?
Yeah.
It's going to be far more. beneficial for you in the long run than it is for you to, give up your integrity and your values. So
Absolutely. And there's so much to be said for ethical decision making in uniform because it harms us all. When people think they're going to skirt the system and, play games and, let's get out of the headlines. There's always going to be news to be told, but good gracious, can we have some good things balancing out the constant negative and then quit excusing it? Quit immediately defending it because you feel like it's going to forever make us all look bad. Newsflash, hello, like the movie Bueller, we already look bad because of what we're seeing and what's in the news and what's being highlighted. So you can't make it look any worse by being honest.
but I think also here's another thing about it. We're going to be in the news. Listen, like I said earlier, we're human. We're fallible. We're going to make mistakes. Anybody, doctors, priests, pilots, you name it. You know what I mean? They all make mistakes or they all do things that are bad, evil, and awful. Let's just not even say they made a mistake. Let's just say there's bad, evil, awful people in the world. So my point is, when we are in the news because somebody made or did something dumb, stop trying to defend it. Be the first person to point at them and say, yep, he's dumb. He deserves what he's getting. She deserved to get fired. She deserved to get prosecuted. He deserved this. He deserved. Stop trying to justify it and say, oh, society's out against us. So, no, they don't appreciate us.
I don't
No,
like your
well,
imitations. Let me just,
okay. I'm sorry. I'll try not to do it.
It has the same voice, and I can picture a face to go with that. I have an image of this person that you're imitating. I really do.
Look, hey,
I really do.
They sound like they're in brief. The society doesn't appreciate
Always
us.
some
I'm
pushback.
sorry.
And
Right.
you know what? When you're on the topic of that, it is a difficult task for people who don't like law enforcement, who look like us, who think we're crazy to go in and be part of a solution.
Yeah.
It's never ending. Like you catch it from all sides, and even more reason to do the right thing, to treat people fairly, to get out of your biases. I'm not saying you don't have them. You're entitled to feel how you feel. But when you infuse it into every fabric and fiber and thread of your uniform, you are wrong. I don't care who you are, on what color line, which side of the fence, the aisle, the politics, all of it. And why are we bringing politics into law enforcement and mirror matching them? It's a dumb argument. Period. I hate to say it that way. If I offend anybody that's looking, it is a dumb argument to defend the fact that we are choosing, because if you choose to use politics in law enforcement, you're going to allow that choice to dictate how you deal with people. And we're right back to the same monkey madness. People going off and doing stupid things because of, I'm sorry, I don't know any better. I didn't grow up in this neighborhood. These people are all animals. Or, well, this person looks nice and kind and they wouldn't harm a flea. And you find out they're a serial killer or they've gone and shot up a school. I'm sorry. This is the reality of what we live in. Why not be objective and suspend your thinking until you have further information and let that lead you, rather than an immediate mindset that tears down? And we're still stuck on this hamster wheel and it's going nowhere fast because the wheel is just still squeaking and we're thinking we're getting somewhere and we're not. Wow, that was a deep one. What do you think we kind of move it along and go to the next?
Yeah. Went down a couple of rabbit holes on that.
But sometimes it takes it there. That's the whole point of a conversation. So our next one is kind of tied into whatever we. What'd you say?
That's what we just talked about.
There's your invitation already. Backing the blue no matter what. I have experienced this on steroids. I had a certain person commenting on a post of mine. And first of all, immediately they took it to politics. It had absolutely zero to do to do with the topic and what I posted. I posted something in referencing the fact that part of this case against me was them calling me a thug, no less, because I grew up in Compton. And the person got on and immediately started bringing the left and the right and the politics into it. And I'm like, huh? What are you talking about? And it was such a rush to judgment in a defense that it led through a discussion that said, well, I've had things bad happen to me too. Okay, but we're not talking about you. Well, it's not about your color. Well, I wasn't talking about my color. Well, and if you're reading through this, it would make it seem like you're saying that they attacked you being from Compton and that was part of your case. I paused.
Sit there and blink.
Crickets. And I ended up having to tell the person, yes, as crazy as that sounds, I was said to have been throwing up gang signs at work. I had to stop even while being interviewed and said, I am so sorry, but I got to know what sign I was throwing up. Like what sign did I display? Because if you were really going to be this shady and stack a case against someone, how about you find out what area they lived in? So you're ready with the sign that you're going to make up that they supposedly displayed. How about you have a little bit more of using your investigative skills or lack thereof and get a foolproof lie together before you start stacking them and they're all crumbling and falling
You
apart.
just ask the person that said that what gang sign did she throw up and at least what did it look like? And if you don't want it, but that was such a shabby investigation. They didn't ask anything and try to corroborate anything. They were just getting words on paper. They already knew what they wanted to do and which direction they were going with it.
Absolutely. And I would say to the commenters who actually get onto posts, and you see it all the time, I cannot stand to see people dogpile their opinions to tamp someone down. We all have a right to post. The algorithm or the social media people ish back in the back scenes, they decide what can stay on a screen and what comes off of it. You don't get to choose to say, well, anybody can post whatever and it's freedom of speech, but yet freedom of speech is only freedom for some people to be able to speak. And then you dogpile, and in uniform, it irritates me the most because it literally proves the argument of the public. When we behave out of character and the uniform wears us instead of the other way around, we hand them exactly the keys to say exactly what they say. And by them, I mean people in the community, me included, full circle. Remember, I start out growing up in a neighborhood where I didn't trust law enforcement. I stayed out of the fray. And I was so busy and my parents had me doing so many different things. I didn't have that exposure with law enforcement, but I wasn't a fan. And now coming full circle, you've proved to me that the very people that I did used to see, some of them were horrible. They should not be wearing a uniform. There's a whole lot that are still in that arena today. And you are correct, Eric, when you said we are so worried about training and these deputies on the street, and they're at fault for everything. But what about the leaders who are signing off on those reports, giving you something to sign to support a lie for someone who is cowering behind a car and not helping you, saving himself in sense? And I'm assuming it was a he, but you have a person who's going to smooth it over and cover it up. The same person that you mentioned earlier, Alex Villanueva, made a statement. And so it's public and it's in a video that's on YouTube. And he said, black on black crime it's there and it has nothing to do with law enforcement. I'm going to blink again. So crime has nothing to do with law enforcement. Or, sir, did you mean like another statement you made decades ago? Did you mean that it didn't matter and it didn't had nothing to do with law enforcement because let them just kill each other? Is that what you meant by that? And you're supposed to be the person making the top decisions within the department at the time that you were sitting there? I absolutely agree with you, Eric. And it's why I always challenge when people talk about millennials and these young people and they don't know. And, back in our day and the hot years and all of that. But the problems are in the arena of those who are our age and even older. That's where the problems are. What are we showing the people that are coming behind us? If we're okay and we're signing off, backing the blue no matter what they do, a real partner is going to check me so that I get better, not let me go down a rabbit hole and continue to drink and get behind the wheel and continue to go out and party. And now I've got 3 or 4 ex-wives and 3 or 4 houses that they now have, and I don't have money. And it's like the same things that you hear in the stories that you hear, but a real partner is going to pull your coat. They're going to tell you, you're going down the wrong road. I don't want to see you crash your car. I don't want to see you hurt. I don't want you to actually get a DUI and then possibly lose your job. And if we're so busy hiding behind, well, I don't want to offend my partners, I think you're doing a disservice to your partner if you're not checking them and letting them know that it is wrong. And I'm not saying a public statement of a wrong. Pull them to the side right in the moment that they're doing it so they don't continue to go down a bad road. Help your partners. Help them get out of the headlines. Help them stay out of the headlines. And yes, we're going to be in the news. It's a guarantee because someone's going to have a cell phone out filming at any time, all the time. But it's what you do step by step in that moment that will prove whether or not you were right or wrong in that situation. And if you were wrong, you need to take your lumps, period. If they're going to expend energy to pack lies on people that aren't wrong, then you should go a little bit harder in the paint on those who obviously are. So I know I went off on a tangent, but it just annoys me that in uniform, people are willing to risk the lives of others on both sides of that argument. Citizens, community members, whatever you want to call it. It's the us versus them that you spoke about.
Yeah, and I want to say this. We had an incident a few years back where some deputies were ambushed working at the metro station, working on one of the metro line platforms, and somebody just walked up to their car and just shot into their car. We've had a few incidents like that. We had another deputy up in Antelope Valley who was killed because somebody pulled up next to him and shot him. And here's what I want people to know: as tragic as those are for those individuals, and this takes nothing away from the loss and the pain and the trauma. I want to say, and I'd be willing to put money on it, that the reality of it is that in neither of those instances where those deputies, do I believe that those deputies were personally targeted for who they were in name. They were targeted for what they represented. They were targeted because of the uniform that they wore, the vehicles that they drove. So if we as law enforcement don't wake the heck up and ask ourselves, why would somebody do that? Mm-hmm. As opposed to just saying, oh, they're a bad, awful, terrible person. Ask yourself, why would somebody think or want, why would somebody have that much hatred to the supposed guardians of our community? Why would somebody have that much hatred to those people that are supposed to be their public safety, that are supposed to keep the public safe? If we don't wake up and look in ourselves and look internally and say, what did we do as a profession or an organization that would prompt somebody? And I'm not saying that our profession is at fault. What I'm saying is if we don't look in the mirror while we're looking at these incidents and see how we contributed to it, that's one of our biggest failures. Absolutely. I believe that's truly one of our biggest failures.
Absolutely. And I'm going to piggyback on that and say that the negative headlines, the negative incidents, the excessive force, the automatically backing the blue no matter what, the tamping down of people and not being willing to hear what they have to say. Obviously, you don't wait to be harmed, and we don't wear the uniforms to be mistreated. That is not the point. But exactly what you're talking about, Eric, is that you're putting other people at risk,
Yep.
period. Every time you make a decision to do nothing but back the blue, and even when it's wrong, hey, it's still right because it's uniform, you put one of your partners in jeopardy. And then
Every time.
we're actually in memory of people, and we hold the memorials. We're sad about it, and yet we still won't get out of our own way and do the right thing to start. If nothing else, be selfish. Be selfish, and you're tired of losing your partner, so shift your way of thinking so that we work better, operationally more sound, doing the right thing. Don't pad things in reports and lie about certain things. I mean, the Brady list. You know what I
It,
mean?
it,
You think about
yeah.
the number of people who have been caught dead to rights in telling lies. And yet we're still, we're still gonna, it's back in the blue, period.
And I just want to make this point again for the law enforcement. Um, what I'm talking about is far different than the person that just committed a crime and is trying to get away. And
Absolutely.
what you represent is interference with their freedom. What I'm talking
Excuse
about,
me.
I'm not talking about the person who will run, jump, shoot to escape. I'm talking about these ambushes are because every time, and it's not even just about backing the blue, but every time one of us in uniform violates the law, every time we abuse our power, our authority, every time we break and violate the public's trust, it makes anybody wearing that uniform a target or more of a target. That's what I'm talking about. The job is dangerous. We know that we are going to get out there and have to deal with people. Hey, listen, there's people that commit crimes. Their job is to be able to commit that crime and get away any means necessary. And if you interfere with that portion of them getting away, yeah, they're going to fight. They're going to shoot. I mean, that's we understand. But it's those ambushes come because there's hatred. Those ambushes come because somebody violated the public's trust some way, somehow. That's what we're talking about.
And on the flip side of that coin, we cannot lump all law enforcement officers into the same pile.
Right.
No more than we want to lump all of one particular race into the same pile. It is really sincerely a code 3 conversations when you get people saying all cops are bad. I am going to say the man on the screen sitting here talking to me is not a bad cop, nor was he before retiring. I would like to know that I was not a bad cop, nor before with my own retirement here recently. We There are plenty, and I want to speak to those of us who do the job, do it well, support people, are in the community, are wanting better, are making themselves available as officers and not oh, you're over there and then we're over here. I want to thank those who do the job and do the job well. I want to thank those who are of high integrity and the courage and the honor, and those who are wearing the uniform and not letting the uniform wear them. Hats off to you. I salute you. I appreciate you. I think it is amazing, especially in a space where sometimes you're not always welcome. When you're the person who is, quote unquote, and I've heard this before, to buy the book. What's wrong with doing things the way that they're supposed to be or the laws that are written? Why is that such a nerd? An anomaly. You're different if you're trying to do the right thing. Why in our society is that so bad? I don't understand it. I don't get it. But I want to take time. I really, really do. I would like to take time with a really great announcement that is upcoming for Code 3 Conversations. And it was part of what we were doing this from the beginning in the first place, and our idea of how we were going to start having those conversations. We are actually going for the very first time to Code 3 Conversations live. We will have right here in Los Angeles a live discussion about one of the topics that Eric brought up earlier within Code 3 Conversations. A news article came out about sexual assaults against women in the jails. And we are going to be speaking to a group of community members who want to come out and join us. And there will be more information about the same coming your way. You can go to code3conversations.com and register for the Code 3 Conversations. And all of those who have signed up and we have contact and connection with, we will be sending out to you an invitation with all of the details. So Code 3 Conversations will be featuring a very special guest that day. He is a candidate for the position of Los Angeles County Sheriff. He has
Really?
all the boxes checked. Yes, and he's being voluntold to be present on that day. So I
You know
want
people like that? You got that kind of clout?
I have a whole lot of clout. I am inviting people to come to that event. Come with your questions. Come with your ability to have a conversation. And please understand that you're walking into the room with uniform officers previously before we both retired, but 62 years of law enforcement experience and the compassion, the respect, and the heart for the community because we are the community. So it is a conversation and not a bashing session, and nor will you be bashed for your opinion and your questions. But we welcome you to come out and actually at the Code 3 Conversation Live, get some of your questions answered, discuss the headline, and we welcome your questions and we welcome your feedback and your input. We've had some amazing people who have joined us and come across onto the panel side who had a lot of good things to share. And you never know where your idea could be the turning point for something even greater. So in the last few minutes that we will remain on this Code 3 Conversations, I want in no more than 5 minutes, I want you to give me a reason as a voter in Los Angeles County. Why should I vote for you for Sheriff of Los Angeles County? I know you weren't
Oh,
expecting that.
no. You're trying to put me on the spot. You're trying to ask me for my elevator speech, my stump speech, all of that. But you're giving me 5 minutes. I mean, normally it's a minute or two.
Well, it's a minute or two because they don't
So,
really want to hear what you're
yeah,
about. Some people already have their
exactly.
mind made up for who they want or
Exactly.
what
Okay.
candidate. But
So what's
I
your
want you to
question? Why
talk
am I
to
running? You
I no, I
okay,
want you to speak to this is to the people of Los Angeles County. This is a
got it.
question for candidate Eric Strong, former chief of probation in the position he was in, 20 plus years in one law enforcement agency, 2 or 3 in another, a guy who has worked 4 different agencies. And I want to know why should I check the box? You know, me, obviously, you know who I'm going to be voting for, but why is Joe Blow citizen in Los Angeles? Why should they vote for you? And that's an honest question. I want your honest answer. And this is not planned. And I know I just threw that on you, but you,
Okay. Listen, where we are in law enforcement, where we are in the LA County Sheriff's Department, which is the largest sheriff department in the country, has the largest jail system in the country, and unfortunately has the largest mental health hospital in its jails. The things that are going on there, you mentioned an article about sexual abuses against the women in our jails. The attorney general is suing the sheriff and the sheriff department for the inhumane conditions in the jails. We've had deputy gangs. We've got transparency issues and obviously accountability issues. None of that has to exist. It exists because of repeated and continued failed leadership. Listen, we have given a chance to the current sheriff. He's had an opportunity and he squandered it. He hasn't done much of anything. The previous sheriff we had before him was very loud, toxic, and disruptive. Our current sheriff, all he's done is quieted the noise, made friends, played nice in the sandbox, but he hasn't made any changes. So the deputy gang issue is still there. He actually fought against transparency against the Civilian Oversight Commission. He actually sued to not give them information that legislation had already been passed that made that information available to them. People are leaving, retiring early, going to other agencies and organizations. There's so many things I can go on and on and on about that are just, we're in a very, very bad place. So the reality of it is we don't have to be there. We're there because of the continued cronyism, nepotism, poor decision-making, poor planning. We've had more tragic accidents in our sheriff's department over the last 3 years, probably than in the history of the department. What I know and what I believe in is that we can do better. The way that we're handling our mental health, and as I said, we have the largest mental health hospital in our jail. Something's wrong with that. The way that we're handling people that are in mental health crisis, people that are having mental health issues, the way that we're handling people that are suffering from substance abuse, the way that we're dealing with people that are unhoused. We've been trying to arrest our way out of that for decades. It's not working. We need to do something different. Messaging is really what it's about. How do we change the culture of an organization? Well, you got to start with having different expectations. You got to start with holding a level of accountability. You have to start with talking about it and acknowledging it so that you can begin to prepare to fix it. Recruitment, we're not recruiting. People do not want to come and work at the sheriff's department. People, like I said, are leaving early. And it's not because they can't do the job. It's not because they don't make enough money. It's not because it's not a great profession and you're going to get great benefits and a good retirement. It's because they don't want to be in the toxic environment. They don't want to be in that toxic organization. And funny, if you look at my TikTok, Strong for Sheriff, I asked a question. And the question was, what's one of the leading stressors for law enforcement on the job? And just an enormous amount of responses. They all said bad admin, bad executives. And that's exactly what we're having. So I have a plan. I have a plan to fix it. I know how to recruit. I know how to hire. We can do it quickly. We can get people on board. Our deputies are depleted emotionally, physically, mentally, because they're working 8 to 12 shifts of overtime a month. Well, if you get 2 days off a week, you only got 8 days off. They're not seeing their families. They're not seeing their kids. They're missing important events. They're getting that stress and that pressure. Then they got to go to court at the same time. So we have a plan for recruiting. We have a plan for a new way to handle with a co-responder model that working with some of the leading people in the industry of mental health and in recovery that are going to work with us for a co-responder model so that we can get people off the streets and get them the services that they need. It's going to free up deputies to go and provide public safety. It's going to free up space in our jails, and it's going to save money. And the real thing is transparency and accountability. We have to move with those ethics and with that integrity. When people do wrong, we have to hold them accountable and we have to tell the public, yes, they did wrong. We got to stop hiding behind it's an open investigation or it's an ongoing investigation. We can't tell you anything. Yes, we can. There's a lot we can't tell you. There may be some things we can't tell you, but we also can tell you and we can give you some information. And we just have to care about the communities that we are providing our services to. Every community, not just certain communities. We have to care. We have to restructure things. I have the plan. I've been working on it. We're going to make some very, very dynamic, bold changes, and we're going to do them very quickly. Why? Because we can. And the last thing I will say is this. Why can I do these things and nobody else has been able to do them? It's very simple. Because I want to. I want to make the change. I want to reform. I've grown up in LA County and I've had negative encounters with law enforcement. I've had family members that have suffered from mental health and substance abuse. I've had family members that are in and out of our very jail system that I work in. I want to do better because it's personal for me. So we're going to do it.
Wow, mic drop. You have me like, and I already know, and I get to see you planning and working toward it, and the late nights and the journaling and the writing and the plans and more plans. And I want to go watch a movie, but we're like, you got a plan, and then you got an event, and then you got to go somewhere, and then my movie that gets put on the back. No, I'm just joking. But for our audience and for those who are watching this later on, even the election's coming up, and it's coming up, and this coming June in the first week, usually, I believe that's how it lands. But you need to actually make sure that A, you're registered to vote, and then get your pen ready to bubble in a name next to ERIC Strong. Eric Strong for Los Angeles County Sheriff. And Eric, how do they reach out or find out more or read on their own or get a little bit more of what you're planning? How your website, your social media, how do they connect with you?
The biggest thing that I need is amplification. Everybody to share this, be deliberate, start the conversations. Don't wait to hear about it. Oh, yeah, I saw this guy. Be the one that starts the conversation. Be the one that shares the information. It's pretty simple, but it's strong, STRONG, the number 4, sheriff, SHERIFF, strongforsheriff.com. Info at strongforsheriff.com is an email I can be reached. All of my social media platforms are Strong for Sheriff at IG, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube. You can go to YouTube, see many of these videos here. You can go to Facebook and Instagram, and you can go to www.strongforsheriff.com and see more about my pillars and foundation for success and what we're going to do to change not only LA County Sheriff's Department, but law enforcement.
Yeah, I totally do. And with that being said, with along the lines of that, you can reach me, CC Strong, with Code3Conversations on all of the social media platforms: TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, and it's pretty much the same. CEECEEstrong.com. You can learn more about this platform as well as some other platforms and ways that you can bounce back from the devastating things in the workplace and how to use 7 C's, as I call them, to do so. And they are proven steps that I use to not have my career completely snatched away from me. So we are going to give you a little bit of your time back. We're going to allow you to go ahead and take off, and do me a favor. Make sure that you stay connected with ccstrong.com and strong, the number 4, sheriff.com. And not only that, I will ask that you not only get involved and amplify the message, but everything in this day and age, especially with politics, the support to get the message out even more comes in your monetary donation. So I would ask, on behalf of the Strong for Sheriff platform and for the campaign, that you give your dollar amount. It doesn't have to be a huge amount of money, but we need to know that you are supporting a great cause. And I'm going to plug that you don't know 250,000 people. But 250,000 people voted for you in that last election, and you were number 3. And the 2 that actually were in the runoff have already shown us what they could do. So I look forward to seeing what you can do and what they can do. So thank you once again. My partner in life, my partner in crime, in good kind of crime, and with the Code 3 Conversations. And you all should be looking for, by going to and connecting in with me or connecting through the Code 3 Conversations, get your information to us. You can also email info@ccstrong.com if you are interested in the information to go out and be emailed to you for you to attend the first ever Code 3 Conversation Live, which is on January 28th at 6 p.m. That's Code 3 Conversations Live, January 28th at 6 p.m. here in the heart of Los Angeles. So, with that, I say to you and wish you a very, very great evening. And we thank you today for you joining in with us. And we look forward to the next time we can be.
She froze on us. I don't know if you can hear me, but ooh, that wasn't a good picture for the freeze on. She was. Did you come back
Ooh,
to us? You
I
froze for a
did.
minute. Okay, I
I
didn't know if
came
you did.
back. This will be
Okay.
the blooper reel. So people get to see the back scenes. This is the blooper
Right,
reel.
right. Okay.
So
All
you all have
right.
an amazing night. And we look forward to seeing you soon.